Hey guys, uh, this is a short video. I want to talk about, though, kind of on a scale, on a concept wise, why it's hard to get good at Hearthstone, why there aren't easy tips. Because people ask me, what are your tips? I had somebody ask me yesterday, what are your tips to get, your easy tips to get from top 200 legend to top 100 legend, which is realistically the 0.1% of Hearthstone to the 0.05% of Hearthstone. It's while it's you're very much playing above the vast majority of players to get to that level. And people wonder, why is it so hard? Why aren't there easy tricks? And I think what's hard is, let's say at one point there was, hey, you do these three things, you get from top 200 legend to top 100 legend. And let's say somebody did those. But the problem is, unless they can keep that knowledge a secret, which they can't, because information goes so quickly, deck lists go so quickly, streamers are streaming everything. So if you have an idea, if you have a technique, if you have a tip that actually is that good, it gets shared by everyone. And then once it's shared by everyone, well, now you just need that to be top 200 legend. It doesn't even get you to top 100 legend because all the people at top 200 are doing it. So that's what's hard about a competitive game, is that any kind of new edge, any new fancy tip, any new gimmick that actually works will disappear in about 3 days to 2 weeks, depending on how fast it goes. So, for a while, like for example, when I invented in Rage Warrior, I was top 10 legend for about 2 weeks, played nothing with Rage Warrior, because I was just kicking the ass of Demon Hunters. And I hadn't quite figured out the deck, I hadn't quite made it perfect, but because it had such an edge on Demon Hunters, even though it wasn't perfect yet, I was killing it. But then when the meta got more solved, all of a sudden you had to actually be really, really good at Enrage Warrior. And I was good at Enrage Warrior, but even, for example, I was really good at beating all these other matchups. But all of a sudden Enrage Warrior mirrors became really important. So I think it's just a thing of, it's the reality of, if I'm building a deck, for example, and I want it to actually help me, I often have to keep it a secret. So decks like my Cube Priest, one that won me the WSOE, I tried to keep a secret as long as possible. And then right after I won WSOE with it, it kind of, then Glee made an addition to it, and then it blew up, and then everyone was using it. So the reality of tips is, like, you can get an advantage, but it only lasts a short period of time. So what do you do if you actually want to be a good Hearthstone player? You got to work on it. You got to find all these leaks in your game. You got to get better. You got to become a more complete player. And that's why it's just hard to find nice little tips. I also thought about another thing is, because of the nature of competition, it's a thing of, for example, if you want to, tips might work for a lot of other things that don't work for Hearthstone. So let's say you want to be a good cook. Somebody might say, oh, you can tell I'm really bad at cook because of this. You say, oh, you put it on something, you put some salt on it, put some spices, and put some butter on it. It'll be good. And that might, if you have absolutely no cooking skills, might really be helpful. But the reality is, if you're competing, you're having a cooking competition, well, all of a sudden, it's not good enough just to be good enough to, like, be hungry or fill you up. You have to be good enough to beat the other person. So you're always competing against other people who have access to more things. So I think just the mindset of, if I'm looking for these easy tips or these easy tricks, so it can, if you're looking for the easy deck to get the legend, the problem is those easy deck to legends, you might find them for 2-3 days, and maybe you can get to legend real quick. But the reality is, it's going to change real fast. So you're not going to be able to do that for long. So, if you can find the top deck, the fancy tip, the fancy trick. But the reality is, if you want to become a consistent legend player, you just got to work on your game. And you know what? It's not that hard, actually, if you study streamers, you work on your game, you talk with friends, you analyze your play, you think about things, you try and actively get better. You'll become a regular legend player. And it's not that hard, but it takes time and it takes energy. So so in a way it is hard, but it's not at the same time. It's not this giant thing that is so unseeable. It's just this thing of like anything. You got to focus, you got to think about it, you got to put the time, got to put the effort, and you will be successful. So just wanted to say that, on one end, there aren't any easy tips and tricks to be great at Hearthstone that last more than 3 to 2 weeks, I'd say. But at the same time, if you work on your game, you can be a consistent Legend player. That being said, with the saying that tips aren't the thing that gets you to the next level. If I had to give tips, if I had to give tips to get to Legend for the first time, what would I give? Because at the end of the day, I understand you guys want to get to Legend. The first tip is play a tempo-based deck. So this is decks like Aggro Demon Hunter, like Highlander Hunter, with a simple, straightforward game plan. This is to master your fundamentals. So by playing a simple, straightforward tempo deck, you can kind of learn the fundamentals, and then eventually you add more and more on. If you play a more complex deck, there might be so many mistakes you're making that you're not even turning. So if you learn a tempo-based deck where you spend your mana, you put stuff on board, you play minions on board, and you go face. You don't always go face. You can take value trades, but that's the one. Two, you'll play the same deck. So I think people will jump around deck to deck to deck, play the same deck. Three, you think about your plays. So, often if you have a play, you think about one and you say, okay, this is my play. Let's see if there's an even better play. If you don't find a better play, you go to your last play. So you might say, oh, I'll play this 1-drop. Well, let's see, I have another 1-drop. Or let's say I have a 5-drop. Or maybe I can play my 3-drop and a hero power. Is that ever better here? Stuff like that. A lot of times it won't be, but you use that extra time to do that. Or you watch other players play, so you can be friends, it can be streamers, especially your deck. But if you can watch other people play and see what they're doing that you're not, those are my tips to get to Legend. So you play a tempo-based deck, you spend your mana, you play for tempo, you're playing the same deck, you're not jumping around, so you can actually get mastery, and you're learning from other players. Those are my actual tips, if I had to give tips. And you can see those tips are about all becoming a better player. So at the end of the day, those aren't any magic those aren't some magic formula. It's just like these are the skills and stuff necessary to become a better player. So you want to become a better player, that's a great place to start. So nothing fancy about that, but if you want to get a Legend, go for that.